check out this awesome podcast that we just made yesterday. Thanks, everybody.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the IBM International Brotherhood of Magicians official podcast. I'm Jason Michaels, your host. Followed by. I don't think followed by is the right word. Joined by my co-hosts Ben Young and Scott Cantrell. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
Howdy.
And we also have our special guest. I was going to have a conversation with my co-host, but we've got our special guest on right now, Michael Dardant. And I think we should literally dive in. You have no idea how much we've already covered before we even started recording. So we're gonna get right into it.
Well, nothing important.
Nothing. Well, if you say so. I don't know. I tell you what, I just watched your Penn Teller Fool Us appearance, and I'd say that was kind of important. You had an outstanding appearance on Penn Teller Fool Us, and it was a lot of fun to watch. I thought your pre-roll package, the thing that they do before you actually are on stage, I thought that like really represented you well. You know, I've known you now for a number of years. Just sort of the magician community, we all end up knowing each other, and certainly through the IBM, we meet each other at different events and whatnot. But I've known you for a long time. But that pre-roll package that, you know, showing you working, you know, the streets, the fact that you're in New Orleans, that you have an acting background. Just give us a little update. So if this is somebody's first opportunity to getting to know you, and they're like, oh, this guy was on Penn Teller Fool Us, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, since you brought up the intro package, I want to give a quick shout out to Ray, who's directing. Ray Green directed the intro package and just did an incredible job. And you could tell when you work with them how much they love what they're doing and how much they enjoy the different perspectives and different things magicians are going to bring to the table when they're filming them. So we had a lovely time, and he was really excited about it. And I see why, because they did an outstanding job. It is a difficult thing to do when you have basically 5 minutes to get to know your audience, get to know anyone in 5 minutes, to get to know your crowd. I usually in a show will spend the first 5 minutes just kind of like warming everybody up to my personality, and I might not have even done a trick yet. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out how during this short period of time get people to know me, get people to know what I do and who I am, and when I'm being serious and when I'm being funny. And that was one of the challenges for sure. Getting into that is figuring that out, just like it is a challenge on any one of these shows, that in such a short period of time, how do I explain who I am and have people get to know me? Well, I was born in France, grew up in Cajun country, have been known as Magic Mike, but not that Magic Mike, because even though I'm an MC for a burlesque troupe, I don't usually get naked on stage. And I say usually because, you know, who knows? Times are weird. It's still early.
It's a podcast, Michael, so it's safe. Oh wait,
yeah.
we have the
No. It's a video podcast too. So
I see the video. Yeah.
I don't want to have to blur out like a part of the screen.
Well, you already have to edit if you were recording earlier.
No, that's true. That's true. No, but you know what? The package, your package.
Now you're once again confusing me with the other Magic Mike. Okay, that's the term they use when they're booking him for bachelorette parties instead of what they should be booking, which is card tricks. I actually, I can't share my screen. Huh? I'm going to do a funny video because I just saw last Friday here in New Orleans. I forget the venue, a venue called The Goat. They had the Magic Mike dancers. It was like ladies' night, the Magic Mike experience. So I'm going to do a video saying, I understand they're having to give a lot of refunds. I apologize to all the ladies who were there looking for card tricks. I understand why you're upset.
So what you're saying is the magic that you do is a lot different from the magic that they do. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think it's a lot more sophisticated. You know, it depends on the state you're in. I mean, in New Orleans, there's a time when people will appreciate one over the other, and it just depends on when you catch people, because there are times when they will definitely love the card tricks more, and there's times when they just don't have the mental capacity for card tricks, so you may as well just be taking off your clothes.
Yeah.
That
Well,
one.
and that's the quote of the day. There you go. We can
Yeah,
put that one up.
I was gonna say that's a wrap on the pod.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
we pretty much covered it.
Is that well? Why write it down? Because I don't even know what I said. Write it down because I want good quotes.
Absolutely. So, okay, tell me about what it's like to do. So, okay, you're according to what I learned on the pre-package before you were actually on
Right.
stage, you
Yeah.
you have been, I don't know if you still are, but you have been a street performer in New Orleans. So tell me
Yes.
about that. What is that
So,
like?
well, let me apologize to all the current street performers and the people that have known me for years and never seen me do a street show because it kind of made me look. I think they wanted the drama of going from street performing to the corporate world. I don't remember how they even phrased it, but actually, when I first came to New Orleans, I was coming here on a regular basis specifically for that reason. I didn't even live here yet. I came to try my hand at street performing. I traveled with a juggler friend of mine named Patrick Kelly. We would drive from Lafayette, or outside Lafayette, where I live, to New Orleans during busy times, busy weekends. And I still was a magician over anything else. And that was definitely my main love. But really, in the street show initially, I worked more on juggling than on magic. And the reason is it's so much more visual. It's so much more visual. You can get up higher. Jugglers, definitely, it's easier for them to build a large crowd than magicians. Magicians can do it, of course, but you have to work a lot harder. But I learned a lot in that situation about how to fail, how to handle rejection, how to handle anything that could occur. Because, I mean, take any day of the year, you go out on the streets of New Orleans, and I guarantee you something is going to happen you did not plan for, you did not expect. And you'll have a great story about it afterward. But learning how to handle those situations and make it look smooth and make it look like this is all planned. That comes a lot from either street performing or I was a tour guide in the city. That any situation where you put yourself or like even work in restaurants where you're constantly practicing, rehearsing a routine, but it's going to go different every time. You're going to get different reactions, different response, and you learn to hone in on that is going to be helpful. I'm sorry, I've been rambling. Did that?
No, man.
What was your question? Did that answer your question? You don't remember? What did you ask me?
Was there a question?
Michael, I'll just cut in. So, Michael,
this is how this is going to go.
It's
You're
Scott's
going to
turn.
have
We go
to
in
cut
order
in
of
to
age.
get anything
No.
in. Yes.
Scott goes next, and then the kid. No, I'm just kidding, Ben.
Okay, Scott, will you ask him?
I'm going to ask Ben if he has a question to ask.
Ben, do you have a question?
What? Okay, wonderful. So, Michael, you're known for like improv a lot, and you even talked about this in your Fool Us spot. So did performing on the street and having to deal with all those unexpected interactions, did that sort of help develop that skill for you? Or was it sort of something you were doing separately that played into that?
Well, both actually. What's kind of strange is that I didn't really know how to define it until I started taking like formal improv training and working with other people and the improv training that you do as a group, as a collective. And that's where it starts to teach you the right techniques. But when you're interacting with your audience and it's changing constantly, and you either have the unexpectedness of the streets of New Orleans or you have the crazy hilarity of working with Cajuns who love to laugh and love to be in the moment of a show, you start to adapt certain principles and you start to learn what works and what doesn't. And it's like it took years before I even realized that I had figured out how to yes and I had figured out what that meant, just didn't know how to define it. I was doing that already with people every time I'd have them pick a card, or if somebody would talk back, or if I'd have a heckler in the street, I would learn not to work against them but to work with them and figure out what they want and learn how to build upon that. And you start to get excited about the bonus moments that people are giving you that you can then play with, that you can then improv with, because it goes a lot differently than what you expect. And if you're doing the same trick over and over and over, you get kind of sick of your own material. And it's nice to be able to switch it up, to have someone come in with a response you've never heard before. I was on a cruise ship just the beginning of the year, and the lady, I do this squeaker bit where I just posted a video on a squeaker bit where I say there's a mosquito in the squeaker, I'm doing the squeaker thing. And the lady killed my mosquito. Like, I've never had this happen. I've done this for kids. I've never had this happen where she slaps, like I usually end up doing it and then I hand it as a joke. She did this. And so what is my choice now? That I had to go with it, right? My mosquito is dead now. And so I just look at the ground. I'm like, you killed it. And I mean, of course it was hilarious, but whatever I was going to do later, I'm no longer doing because my mosquito's dead. But at the same time, I'm like, this is an unbelievable situation that I can't believe this has never happened. And this lady's hilarious because she decided that was her yes anding me of like, oh, there's a mosquito. Yes, and I will kill it. Which that's how it went.
So golly. So tell me how much of when you're doing a routine or when you're coming up with something and then you put it out into the real world, how much of what you're doing is scripted? Because obviously the improvisation allows you to go in a lot of different directions, but I am a pretty relatively scripted performer. And one of my weaknesses is that when things happen that are just wildly out of what I was expecting, I don't go with it as well as some people do it. And I've seen you do it. I saw you, I've seen you on numerous occasions, and you are brilliant at it. So how much is actually scripted and how much do you just want to go off the rails? And I say off the rails in a fun way.
Well, we've seen what happens when you go off script as things change the rating of the show. It's like, oh, all of a sudden we were G-rated, but something happened. So it sort of becomes a crutch in a way, because there are times when I should stick to the script, but I'm going to have a lot more fun if I don't. And there are also times that I should be better rehearsed and I should know the script better, but I know I can get away with it. And so I don't. And when you really become focused on improv and you're enjoying it, you have to remember that sticking to your script or knowing your script is the best way to be able to maneuver away from it. Forget how I said it. I was doing a seminar for Jeff McBride at the IBM convention, actually, it was for the Lance Burton Teen seminar. Yeah. And he'll probably remember because he remembers everything about it. He quoted me. He's like, that is a beautiful quote. And I was like, what was it? Because I need quotes. But basically I said, you have to know your script before you can veer away from it. So like, it is very important to write, to be scripted, and to figure that out, to know where you're going and to start figuring out your story, your timing, what is the pattern of what it is that I'm trying to achieve. And then once you really know that, you've honed in on it. Now you've got that as sort of this stable structure behind you that you can always just walk back into and go like, I know this layout. But you're able to just go outside and play in the yard and then go back in and go back to the second floor where you left off. But then you can play around a little bit and go away from it. And you still remember what that pattern is, what that structure is, so that you can still get back to it.
So here I have a theory. My theory is that we all script, but if you do enough shows, because you end up saying the same stuff over and over and over again, but you may not be scripting with intention. So if you do a lot of shows, you start talking, you get used to saying something when you're doing a certain trick, and you probably just fall back into that pattern over and over again. So do you find, what do you say to somebody who says, well, I want to sound off the cuff, because that's typical when people are trying to get away from actually writing a script. What they're saying is, I don't want to sound like a bad performer, or I don't want to sound like an overly scripted bad actor, because overly scripted bad actors are people who make it sound like they're actually, reciting from a script. But somebody who's an actual in the moment performer who does have a script doesn't necessarily sound like they have a script. What do you say? What do you say to that?
Well, I've been there, and I think a lot of magicians have that habit of figuring out along the way and knowing there's certain things I have to say because it goes with the pattern of the effect, it goes with the moves, and then the in-between stuff I'll just kind of figure out. And I've just been kind of saying the same thing for years. But that doesn't mean that it's a good idea, just because the fact that so many of us do it and we get away with it. We kind of rely on the tricks as a crutch in a sense, because the effect's going to blow them away. So this showmanship and the quality of what's leading up to that effect may not be there, and you won't notice it until you watch yourself on video and start taking notes and start paying really attention and start actually scripting what it is that you say, and realize that this big chunk I don't even need. This here could be phrased better. This here I was rambling because I didn't actually have anything set there. I could have responded better to this audience member, but I wasn't even in that train of thought. I wasn't really focused on her, so I couldn't really, yes and the situation. And so you start to realize in that moment, because when you create a beautiful effect, you could kind of be the worst showman in the world, but the effect itself is brilliant and people freak out over it. So you leave thinking, I'm the best, I'm amazing, I'm a superhero. But in fact, just because of what you learned and what you did, you ended in that moment, which is wonderful, because we all know it's easy to go from wizard to idiot in no time, right? So if you ended as a wizard, that's great, but you may have been an idiot up until that point, and they're like, who is this idiot? Wait, that was cool. So we shouldn't just rely on that. We should make sure that we are projecting what we want the entire time, and that's going to come from a little bit more work of scripting and not just relying on I know the trick, so I'm going to get myself through it.
Well, and two comments to that real quick. One, what you're saying about showmanship versus the quality of the effect, and we depend on the quality of the effect to carry the day. That is precisely why I do such weak magic. It's so that I can test my showmanship abilities. Are they still going to like me? And be no. Although there is an interesting lesson there. We might take that to the next ring meeting, Jason. And
give it a try.
Yeah, let's find the weakest mat, bring a weak trick, and see if you can still be entertaining with it. Actually, it's an interesting technique. But my real question, Jason, you alluded to this. Michael, you certainly alluded to this. And Michael, I had the privilege of interviewing you for the Pittsburgh Papers project we were doing for the IBM a couple of years ago when you were emceeing there. And we talked a lot about improvisation. It's very clear in terms of your flight time. It's very clear just watching you on Fool Us, but watching you anytime, of how comfortable you are on stage, or at least how comfortable you appear on stage. And I can only assume in part that is because nothing can surprise you even anymore, and you're prepared for all of it. Doesn't mean you've thought about every contingency. It just means you know with confidence that whatever I get thrown at me, I can do something with it. Talk about sharpening that skill set. I mean, I guess, is flight time the only way to do it? Are there techniques to practice without being in front of a live audience and without working with a safety net, so to speak? And then the other piece I wanted you to touch on is being in the moment, because I think that so often, and I'm guilty of this too, we will get stuck in that rote sort of recitation of our script and be thinking about other things while we're performing, and we lose the moment and we forget someone's name or whatever it may be. But maybe talk about those two aspects of your skill set from an improv standpoint.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the weaker magic thing, because you say it's a joke, but the fact is we've all seen situations where someone might have the weaker effect, but because they were overall a better showman, perhaps they won the competition, or they won the respect, or they fooled Penn and Teller. As people rewind and watch your act over and over, of course, they have a better chance of figuring it out. They have a better chance than Penn and Teller did, because they don't get to rewind. They get to just see it one time. And if the showmanship, if the comedy, if that is the misdirection works for you, then by all means, that qualifies as what you did actually worked. And that was the means to the ends, not that, oh, well, your sleights aren't as good as this guy, or you could have done a better effect. That could be all true. But I sent in my competition act from way back that had so many moves, so much manipulation, so much sleight of hand. That didn't get me on the show.
Yeah,
I needed to focus on one particular effect that I had worked on, that I built up, and that's what actually worked. So it's not even necessarily to the strength of the magic of what you're doing. That's really just your excuse for being there. It's going to be the strength as a whole. And I've told people, I said this recently, and people are like, do you consider yourself like one of the best magicians? I say, honestly, I consider myself an average magician. I consider myself an above average entertainer.
Right.
Because it's not just that I'm bringing so much with it to the table. And just Jason didn't ask me to do a trick, but since I had it ready here, people ask me all the time, like, when you go on these shows, like, how do you measure up when there's so many magicians that have been on the show? How do you measure up? I go like this. Because I measure up, but then you can let me back up just a little, because you can actually just make it. Oh, wait, Nate, I'm gonna do that again. Okay, I'll show you how this stuff. So you go, ta-da! That is going to camera, but see, it's a slap bracelet.
Yeah.
That's how I make it vanish, and all of a sudden, it's an appearing bracelet and vanishing ruler trick all in one.
And for the folks listening to the podcast, we hope you enjoyed those 15 seconds of dead air.
Okay. So let me describe it in closed caption for you guys. The magician then pulled a ruler out of nowhere. He then proceeds to wave his hands and accidentally messes up the trick once, but then does what is known as a flick stick move. You can Google it, and the ruler vanishes. Meanwhile, mysteriously, a bracelet appears on his
Nailed it.
catch everybody.
You got it. So tell me my experience.
Well, I didn't really
you have
finish
that's right. You have the second part of that. All right.
The second part is more of, I guess, how do you hone that, create those moments, and find that confidence in that I'm going to be able to handle any situation.
Exactly.
Well, that's like anything else is exercise. And, people hear ideas and think that that means that they have now implemented it. And that's just not the case. You may have heard the idea of like, when you're brainstorming, there's no bad ideas. But then when you get in a brainstorm session with someone, what's the first thing that happens? Someone says something and internally you're like, oh, that's stupid. Right. And like immediately went against what the whole notion was. And that's because you didn't practice, you didn't exercise, you didn't train your brain to think that way. You didn't train your brain to go, yes, that's a great idea. And here's what I'm going to add to it so that we could build together. And so that's why a lot of these silly improv games that we do, I'm now offering improv seminars. I'm going to have my next online course starting soon. It's called Funny You Should Ask. And I've been offering to companies. So corporations, people that have nothing to do with entertainment, with theater, with comedy. My dad even asked me, he goes like, why would they benefit from improv comedy? I said, it's not that they'll benefit from improv comedy. They'll benefit from improv. They'll benefit from understanding improv, from the principles of improv, the techniques of improv, and how it applies to everyday life and everything else you're trying to achieve, and how we interact with people. Because anytime there's no script, that is improv. So by practicing these techniques and training your brain to think that way, you'll all of a sudden have these skills you didn't know you had, where you're like a ninja. You're like a witty ninja of like pulling out puns from nowhere and callbacks. And how did he think of that? Well, it's because he's been storing this information, because he's been practicing these silly games over and over with partners or on your own. And I think one of your questions is, how do you practice on your own, or how do you practice when you're not in partner training? That's a bit more difficult, but well, for most people, for us, not as much, because anytime we're interacting with any audience member, that's improv. Right. So by learning to listen to, you create active listening by listening to what your spectator says and then building on that. One simple way to start working with it is, instead of just having them write their name on the ambitious card routine, take John Allen's idea. I first saw John Allen do it, where he has them write a magic word. And so now you still have the proof that this card obviously is only one of a kind, because it has their word written, but now you have this whatever word they came up with that you can then play with along the way and start thinking of jokes and improvisations. One of the simple jokes or games that we do that's very challenging and for a lot of people kind of like stressful is called 99 blanks. You know of this one?
I've heard of it.
Improv game. So basically it's like the old bar joke, guy walks into a bar. So you just come up with an object, all right? And then everybody's standing in a line, and the improvisers, when they have something, they just step forward and create a joke out of nothing. Yeah. So the suggestion from the audience is any object, any word, and you're like 99 blanks, walk into a bar, the bartender says, we don't serve your kind here, and here's why. And so that's kind of how that one. So give me, Ben, give me any word or object.
External hard drive.
All right, so 99 external hard drives. Walk into a bar, the bartender says, hey, don't you know we have a drive-through? So there you go. So that's an example. You just like you find whatever connection you can make, and that kind of game also teaches you to fail, because that got kind of a chuckle, right? And more so just because it was that like off the top of my head, then it wasn't actually an actual good or well-written joke. So sometimes the joke just doesn't hit at all, or you just can't get out. And so you learn, and everybody can go like, wah, wah, or, and so you learn to deal with that. You learn that you can accept that a lot more when you've practiced that way. So like, I don't care if all you people boo me. I've been booed. That's nothing new. Bring me your boos. Your boos mean nothing because I've seen what makes you applaud. That's from Rick and Morty. Rick's brilliant lines that was a Rick and Morty line. Rick says, your boons be nothing. I've seen what makes you applaud.
So, Michael, I'm glad that you mentioned failure, because I feel like maybe that's something that holds a lot of magicians back from improving. Like, and I know that in general, like improving doesn't have to be comedy, but I think in the context of magic, a lot of times that is what we're going for, is we're trying to be funny in the moment.
Yeah.
So do you think that people are scared of failing, and maybe that's part of the reason that they don't try to make the joke, they don't try to engage with the thing? And is there anything else you want to talk about related
No,
to that?
absolutely. I think just like anyone else, there's always a fear of failure. I mean, that's why, how many magicians do you know that have never really attempted a classic force or a watch steal or something of that nature, because it's not something you can sit at home and practice in front of a mirror. It's something that you have to sort of improvise. You have to be willing to go out there and take the risk and fail 9 times out of 10 before all of a sudden you're failing only 0.01% out of 10, or whatever it is, because you've practiced it that many times and you've gotten that comfortable. And that's part of it, being comfortable with failure. And that's what I tell people in improv training, is that you just learn to accept that you slam dunk the failure. And improv comedy is great because of the fact that people know the nature of the game. So you can absolutely fail and it's still a success because you're still being entertaining, as long as you do slam dunk that failure. If I do the worst Arnold Schwarzenegger impression in the world, and we're doing a scene together, and because of what you do in the scene, you make me Arnold Schwarzenegger, or I have to all of a sudden do the voice because I'm going to yes and you say something like, well, hi there, Mr. Schwarzenegger. And so that's what I got to do. Whether I do the best Arnold in the world or the worst Arnold in the world, it's going to work. It's going to be hilarious. I can absolutely fail at it and still have the success of an entertaining scene, as long as I commit, as long as I'm willing to fail at it, because the audience knows I have no script. That's the safety net of improv comedy, is the fact that the audience is with you along the way. They want to see what you're going to come up with, knowing that you just got thrown under the bus. There's no way you knew what was going to happen. I didn't know you were going to say hard drive, so you knew I had to just come up with something. And that's what makes that extra special, and that's what makes the moment special to people. That's why when you can recreate this in any other show, be it a magic show or anything, if you have those moments that people feel are special to them, that no one else has experienced that way and no one else will experience again, that makes their whole experience worth it. And now it's not just a theater performance, it's something that has reached out and connected with your audience.
I gotta
Do you
be
think
honest. Go ahead.
Do you think that lowers the bar for performers as well? Because like the example you gave when you were on the cruise ship and the woman killed your mosquito, that was unexpected. So do you feel like in those kinds of situations, like anything you do, people appreciate that you're just in the moment and you're willing to go with it? So the joke doesn't have to be as funny as something you scripted, but it has kind of a heightened effect because there's
absolutely.
no way you could have planned it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It lowers the bar already when you think about it. And I learned this when I started trying to figure out how to write comedy. So I was going to all these open mics everywhere and trying to do no magic at all, just do straight up stand up to figure out the timing, figure out how it works, figure out how to win the crowd over without any tricks. I always had a deck of cards in my pocket as sort of this, like, safety net, this go-to. And that kind of like relieved me to know that I could always go there. But the idea was to try not to have to use that. And I realized then comedians have it rough because they got a couple seconds. You got a few seconds to get the crowd to go like, yes, I want to listen to this guy. This guy's going to be funny. Whereas if I just tell you, I can predict the card. Well, now I've got a minute or two that I can kind of hold your attention if you think something's coming, that I don't necessarily have to be funny. I don't necessarily have to even be that interesting if you think something's interesting is along the way. So already the bar is sort of lowered for us because we're claiming to do something impossible or interesting that's going to grab them. But we still have only a certain amount of time before they're like, get to it already, or this guy's really not that funny, and then you're just hoping that the effect is going to win them over.
So I'm going to be honest with you. The more that I've been on and I've watched your live stream, which we'll talk about in a moment, something up my sleeve. And I have heard you on other podcasts, and now talking to you here, it makes me realize, I feel like there's this giant gap in my sort of, like, I know a pretty decent amount about magic and I know a pretty decent amount about theater, but I feel like there's this giant gap that improvisation may be one of the most important things that magicians can learn, just because of what we do. It being, traditional theater never interacts with the audience. Musical theater doesn't interact with the audience. Stand-up comedy, kind of, maybe a little bit, but because of magic being an interactive type of thing, I'm sitting here and I'm shocked by how the realization that I'm hitting, and I'm realizing that improv might be one of the most important things that we can do to strengthen our skill as an entertainer.
It absolutely is. And it's a shame more people haven't realized that. And I didn't realize how few magicians have really studied it until I started talking about it in my lecture. And I'd go, who knows the 2 words of improv, the mantra that we use, like one of the main rules, there are 2 words, and barely anybody raised their hand and could answer me. And I'm realizing, wow, people need to learn these principles. And I guess it shouldn't be surprising when you consider I always kept myself versatile. It wasn't all just about magic for me. I get sick of card tricks and got to do something else. So, and maybe it's because my ADD, but I've always worked on different things, juggling and mime and acting and writing and stand up and whatever I can get my hands on. So for me, it made sense that I was going to at some point pursue improv and start learning the structure. And I know some magicians get so focused on that's their thing. That's what they have. That isn't the boring part of life. They have their magic books. So stretching yourself and learning about other theater arts that may help you to be a more well-rounded performer doesn't always enter the picture until there's a necessity. But it's so important. It's so important to even understand all other aspects of entertainment and why they work and what works and what's connecting with your audience. But you're absolutely right. As magicians, we have way more opportunity to connect and actually talk to an audience member and break that 4th wall than when you're watching any type of play or theater performance. So we have more opportunities that might arise, and there are definitely opportunities, because you could look at them as problems or situations, but it's an opportunity always when something improvisational happens. But just knowing how to handle situations, even if you can do it where you don't pull somebody out of the moment. I remember my students at Jesuit High School who have been taking improv, the theater coach, the theater director, Kate, told me that they were doing a Shakespearean play and something happened where somebody missed the cue or whatever. And now there's either going to be dead space or they've got to improvise. And this wasn't for comedy's sake, but one of my students just started improvising in Shakespeare language, just to keep things going until the person made their entry. And she, of course, knowing the script, knew what was happening, was just so impressed that his brain went there and knew exactly how to handle this situation. Wow. And because he had been doing all these, improv comedy games, he can pull it off even in Shakespeare.
So you're a fooler, man. You, behind you on the screen, you're holding the Fool Us trophy. Yes. You fooled Penn and I did not fool Penn and Teller.
Is it right?
Scott has not fooled Penn and Teller. Ben.
Describe it. Yeah, I pulled it off of there.
Oh, there it is. Look at that. That is amazing. That is amazing.
Does that look cool? Scott, does that look cool?
I liked it. I love it.
Kind of cut off a little bit from the screen, but yeah. I was going to try to pull it out of a hat, but it's cool if I can just pluck it out of the.
I like it. Tell us more about that experience. What was your experience like, and how shocked were you when the realization that you had fooled them?
Definitely shocked. I had determined a while back that I was completely happy and could accept that I probably would not fool them. They know pretty much everything. I figured I probably had a 10% chance, and that I would walk away happy because I would just do my best and do a great performance. And that is how you have to look at it. There's so much drama around the trophy itself, and I get that. I mean, it's a game show, and the fact that they're not negative toward people, the fact that they're not insulting people and making them feel stupid, that takes an element away from all these other reality shows, right? So how are you going to keep the drama? Well, there's some amazing acts that go on there and do an incredible job, but they just didn't actually fool them. And so they got to kind of stick true to that premise. And we've been taught, we know as performers, like, we don't train to fool. I don't want someone looking at what I do as a puzzle. I want them to be so captivated and entertained that by the time they realize that they're puzzled, it's too late. You could try to backtrack, but why bother? Why don't you just sit back and enjoy the ride? And that's kind of where you want to be. And I realized I needed to be in competitions, because even though I was performing for magicians who we know way more and know exactly where to look, The fact of the matter is, when you're laughing, you're not looking. I cannot stare at your left hand while legitimately laughing at the same time. It just doesn't work. You can't go like this, ha 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 ha. It doesn't work. When you laugh, you do what? You look up, you look down, you look at your friend, you elbow your friend. You're in the moment. You're not concentrating on trying to decipher things. You'll have to think about it later. And when I realized that I'd have a full room of magicians that were laughing at my silly puns and I could just palm stuff off and they didn't see it because they were too busy laughing, I realized, wow, I'm actually fooling some magicians here. And that's not even really the intent. I decided a long time ago for competition, I don't care if they see how everything's done. Well, they're supposed to, right? So I'm not even going to worry about that, and there's time you flash, you drop things. And that's another situation where you can just embrace the failure, because what better group to screw up in front of is magicians, instead of like doing it in front of laymen, because they probably knew anyway, right? So that was one thing that I realized along the way. To win anyone over, it's the same thing, whether it's magicians that know it all or Penn and Teller or a group of laymen. You're still trying to achieve the same effect, and that is to kind of get them in that state of being entertained and not focusing on everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I found my experience was that everybody that was part of that production was just just fantastic at what they did, and cared so much about creating a good experience for the magicians so that they could do the very best magic trick possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think of another situation where they're elevating the art of magic. They're elevating the performers. They want you to do the best job you can. They want to have good magic on the show. And when I was there, what convinced me to do it, because I wasn't gonna even touch this, because I was sort of like had a bad taste in my mouth about reality shows ever since what's that? America's Got Issues. When they
Is that what it's
invited
called?
me
Yeah,
to,
that's what it's called.
they asked me to do, because they specifically wanted me to do the Magic Mike dance, which was my impersonation of Channing Tatum. So it was like Magic Mike as Magic Mike. And I only did it for the New Orleans Burlesque show, and then again to win the Greasing of the Poles competition on Bourbon Street, but that's a whole nother thing. And so I knew that if
I love how you just glaze over.
You just said that and just kind of kept going.
The Greasing of the Poles competition. That's an afterthought. Footnote.
That's just so normal in New Orleans that everybody
like,
else is going, huh?
Half the time I've got to like say something and then just skip over it, realizing that, yeah, I understand it's weird that I had a parking meter with me, but there's I don't have time to explain to you why I was holding the parking meter in my hands. That's not the point of the story. So, but anyway, they were going to make me look like an idiot, and it was very obvious to me. And so I told them, because I had no more control. They weren't going to let me open with what I wanted to. I had to do the Magic Mike dance first. That's not what I auditioned with. Yeah. So I kind of had no plans to be on a reality show, but I got a free trip to Vegas because I went as Ed Ripley's advisor. So sometimes you can negotiate with them if you need to have other people with you, or if you have a team, if you need an advisor. And really, my only job, I just kind of stood there and I was just like, yep, looks good from this angle, and I'm done, But at one point I'm hanging out backstage, and it wasn't his act, it was beforehand, and one of like the PAs looks back at me and sees that I'm watching the monitor and says, "Are you helping with this act?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm helping with Ed." She's like, "Could you do me a favor and wait in the green room?" And at first I was kind of like, I wanted to go like, "Don't you know who I am?" It's okay, I'm a match. And I realized I would want the same respect if it was me on stage, of not letting people just watch from any angle that have nothing to do with my routine. And she's doing her job. And I realized, wow, they've been trained to protect the art, to uplift the art, because there was no reason that I needed to watch this guy from behind the scenes, because it has nothing to do with me. I'm Ed's assistant, not his. And so she shooed me off back to the green room. And and then I realized at that moment, I'm like, if anybody's going to make that much trouble to protect magic and uplift the art, then I want to be a part of this, and then cut to 7 years later. But that's when I started sending in videos, because I was like, all right, I want to be a part of this.
That's cool. That's yeah. Like I said, they do a great job. Ben had a great experience with them as well.
Yeah.
Very good, Ben. Very good. Yep. You just say yep when I give you a cue.
Hey, yep. I'm here, man. No, I mean, the short story is I had something go wrong, and Mike Close knew the routine well enough that he was able to basically let me start over again without anybody knowing that anything had gone wrong. It was pretty incredible.
So, Michael, you have we've talked about this. We've talked about having you seeing you perform at multiple IBM conventions. Obviously, this is the International Brotherhood of Magicians podcast. You've been involved with the IBM for years.
Since I was
and
13.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we wanted you on the podcast here today. Tell you do a it's a month. Is it a monthly? It's not twice a month. It's you do your live stream, something up my sleeve. That is a monthly show. Is that correct?
It's been monthly, but the idea was to gain enough content so that when I start putting it out as a podcast, it is actually going to come out weekly.
Okay, tell us all about it.
I know that means I'll have to start doing a few more interviews to keep that up eventually. But we now have 3 years of content. This started pretty much toward the end of COVID. You remember there was a talk show going at the time. Harrison Greenbaum was interviewing magicians. He was doing like twice a week or something. Of course, nobody had anything going on at that point. And then when he got busy, that wasn't happening anymore, and there wasn't much online presence happening with the IBM. And so it was in a chat with Billy and Alex, who are both past presidents of the IBM. They said, he's not continuing this talk show anymore. Do you want to pick it up? And I think I was talking about the fact that I did want to one day host a talk show. And I thought, well, that's what a brilliant opportunity. That makes sense. And it's a chance to really hone in on improv skills, obviously, because another situation where you have absolutely no script, but to be able to interview some of the best magicians all over the world, right? What could be better than that? What an amazing opportunity to be that guy. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting here talking with Lance Burton, one of my heroes since I was 13 years old, because he's on my podcast, on my talk show. And so that's called Something Up My Sleeve. And then, as you know, I asked a lot of people about their Fool Us act. We haven't had Ben yet, so we're going to have you come on as well. We had Jason before, and that footage where we're specifically talking about your performance on Fool Us, I've been organizing kind of I'd say a spin-off podcast, but really it was always the intention to start this one called Fooling Them, where essentially I'm interviewing people about that specific thing about their act on Fool Us. And now you're looking at, they have 11 seasons of performers, so that should be plenty of content as well, because really I've only done about 10 so far. And actually I'm hoping, because tomorrow's April Fool's Day, right? So the plan is that I want to show some past ones and have some new people on as well. Mainly I'm streaming on Twitch and recording with StreamYard, but eventually it'll be on other platforms as well.
So you're interviewing different magicians, and but the focus of the podcast is very much on magic, and specifically also on improv. Like you really, I mean, that is what correct. No, I'm stating it, but I'm also asking. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Initially, I was a lot more focused on improv, and the idea would be that we'd have several guests on, and then we would actually end by trying improv games.
Okay.
Then I realized how difficult it was to schedule people to do this kind of thing, as you know.
Sure.
And so having one person at a time was more feasible as far as being able to conduct the interviews. And then when I had the opportunity, I would try to keep people after for what we call the after party, and we do some improv games and then just like sort of Q&A. But that was the initial approach, was that it wasn't just about magic, and I wanted people to give me examples of when improv situations were happening in their act, and also when improv situations kind of occurred that made them rethink things along the way or add something to the effect because of what had taken place that they weren't expecting. So, and because it had been such a factor for me as well, and helping me to be a better performer, to incorporate improv. So it's really behind the scenes talk. I kind of relate it to, in this case, a podcast version of, and a magician version of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Cool. Initially, right before COVID, we did a pilot episode, and it was called, we had to change the name, but it's called Wizards on Wheels Getting Wasted. So we're now calling it, and we're ready to start pitching it again. Actually, I just got approval to throw it up, because that before my Fool Us episode hits on YouTube, because it's still undergoing the copyright thing, so it's not on YouTube yet. I plan to release this pilot episode that we were pitching before COVID, and then it just kind of dropped. My first guest, does anybody know? Do you want to take a guess at who my first guest is on Wizards on Wheels Getting Wasted? Just wanted to see if you might happen to have seen anything, or if you knew. Or
I have no-
think
I
of
have
somebody
no-
that would be very easy to see wasted. Specifically Canadians.
Canadians getting wasted.
Well, I mean, I've never seen Sean wasted, but that
I
would
was
be
gonna say,
fun.
is it Farquhar?
No, actually, but he was on the list of people we were trying to get for the first one. I think he wasn't around at that time, but he was definitely going to be coming up soon. And now, of course, we've done all of these via this online form. But the initial idea, and you'll see if you are able to watch the pilot episode, is that the idea was flying him into New Orleans, and we go around trying these different cocktails, at different bars,
cool. Yeah, that is
landmarks
cool.
of New Orleans. So that's kind of what it is. So it's about the magic and also the cocktails. But the whole thing was the behind the scenes talk. And I figured, if people can be that entertained and amused by comedians talking about shop while having coffee,
I love
and
it.
even if you don't understand it all, it's got to be somewhat more interesting to hear magicians talking shop. And what's more interesting than coffee? Alcohol. But that was just because since it's a New Orleans thing, it just made sense. So that was why I titled it that, to make people think along those lines. It wasn't hard to explain what the show is about. It's like, oh, have you seen Seinfeld's thing? Well, it's just like that, except magicians. So that was the concept. But Eric LeClaire,
Okay.
Okay.
our first guest,
Okay.
figured he's definitely a good one to bring in. He was absolutely hilarious. We had a ball, and maybe somebody will see it. Actually, I'm going to release it today, and so maybe people will see it, and who knows if it could actually become a show. I'd of course rather do it that way than doing Zoom or StreamYard calls to interview people, but this was an entire film crew and setup. Like this is a much more expensive way to do this kind of stuff, and being on location and everything. And now you're talking about a whole film crew.
So if somebody wants to watch something up my sleeve or Wizards getting
On
wasted.
Wheels getting wasted.
Wizards
Come
on
on,
Wheels
man.
getting wasted. Yeah. So
where do they
look
find
at my
this?
YouTube? And so the easiest way to find me on social medias is actually to remember that I'm not that Magic Mike. Because I was for years just Magic. I tell people Magic Mike, and you can look me up that way. Now, forget about it because you keep running into all these ab muscles, and when you're looking for card tricks, right? So I just say not that Magic Mike. So now I've been tagging everything hashtag not that Magic Mike. But Michael Dardant is my YouTube page, so it's under my name. You'd have to, spell my name properly, and that was one of the reasons I was using Magic Mike, is because people who aren't French don't know how to spell Dardant or even how to say it. But my YouTube is michaeldardant.com. That's where that video will be, and also where I do broadcast, but it's under the live section, and then it'll be reposted later once I do edit, because I haven't edited all these episodes of Something Up My Sleeve, but you can see them in the live section of my YouTube. And then, of course, I'm very active on Twitch as well. And then, of course, the IBM Facebook page. And I think the plan was that eventually we'll have them on. I don't think they're on the website, but we were going to put them there for people to go look at back episodes on the website.
They will be.
But broadcast to the IBM's Facebook page. So if you're listening to this and you haven't been there, there's a lot that is offered for you to learn about magic and just learn about the community on the Facebook page as well.
Excellent. As we start to wrap up, Ben, Scott, are there any other additional things you want to ask about, or any comments you want to make?
Well, just a very quick, short, sharp question for Michael. Obviously, you've got the new show, Magicians on Wheels Getting Wasted. So you're working on that. What else is on the radar now?
I think Two Magicians Walk into a Bar is the working title now, that when we thought we probably would have trouble pitching it with the word wasted, or at least depending
especially
on
when there's driving involved, that could get tricky.
Yeah. Well, we took care of that. We had drivers along the way. In fact, we're using very interesting modes of transportation.
In New Orleans, you have that ability.
Yeah. So we're on a streetcar, then later we're on a carriage ride. We go through the cemeteries. It's a good time. It's a good ride, and I think that maybe it'll get attention now that we're aren't in a pandemic. I forget what networks. There was a couple meetings we had with specific networks, and that's why we had to change the title.
Yeah,
but and then then the whole world ended, so we're now kind of revisiting that. But beside that, what's next? Well, I'm starting to book a lot of dates, and I'm trying to create sort of a tour around the dates that already exist. But I'm back at Chicago Magic Lounge in June.
Nice.
I'm at the Magic Castle in September. And the new House of Cards, which I'm assuming you guys have heard of in Philadelphia, the brand new House of Cards.
House of Magic.
House of Magic. Yeah.
Sorry, House of Cards was Nashville. I said it wrong. Sorry about that. Oops. Okay, rewind. Back to one, everybody. So cut from here. Sorry, Mark. I just, in fact, did an interview. The next one of Something Up My Sleeve is my interview with Mark DeSouza at the House of Magic. So the brand.
That is very exciting.
House of Magic. Now this will be showing. This interview is me walking around with Mark, where he's just talking about the vision, because we're just seeing like the remnants of what this building used to be.
Right.
And then I'll go back when it's done, when the whole theater is created, to see the result, and we'll be able to see that too, and maybe have one of those, I don't know, images where it just goes across and changes. I don't know how to do it, but where you can see like the before and after kind of thing.
That's cool.
And that'll be December that I'm there at House of Magic. So that's the open to the public shows coming up. And then of course I don't have the dates yet, but back to Vegas to work the Penn Teller show, which
of course.
Did you do that with anybody? I don't really know the specifics on how that works, but
I've never done it. I didn't fool him, Michael. I'm not as good as you are.
It's okay. I'm sorry. So it's if you
it's the foolers
back. Okay,
yeah.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, sorry. I was thinking
everyone else is banned for life.
Right. So that should be but it should be sooner than later. So I'll put those dates out as soon as possible too.
Awesome.
Great to get it.
Do you have any public shows coming up in the New Orleans area? Are you still doing things with the burlesque troupe? What's the plan?
Yes, I am, not as frequently because I've been traveling and such, but trying to think if there was any dates coming up. Anytime you want to know what's going on in the burlesque world, you go to TrixieMinx.com. Trixie, who I work with all the time, who, by the way, when my article came out in the newspaper, I have two articles that came out in the Times-Picayune about the Fool Us. The first picture they used was a picture of me and Trixie together. This is her on the cover of New Orleans magazine. She's been on the cover of like everything. And then the one time I get an article in the paper, they use Trixie again. I was like, can I just have my own thing? Like just once? Can I please? She was cracking up. But so Trixie Minx, that's where you'd learn about any shows that I might be emceeing for her. We're already booked on a cruise next year. We do the Big Easy Cruise, which is like a music festival on a boat in January. It's on Holland America. So I do a magic show, and we do the whole burlesque show for everybody. And then we're the only non-music acts. It's all
that is
music.
cool.
It's pretty amazing. It's like 70 New Orleans bands on this boat. They call
Holy cow!
They call it the Big Easy Cruise. Yeah. So there's music constantly.
All right, Ben Young, we're wrapping up. What final thoughts do you have?
Oh, I enjoyed talking about improv. And I think that you have a lot of awesome insights about that. And I hope that people that are listening sort of embrace the idea of going with the flow with things that happen in their shows and just having fun with it and not being afraid to fail.
Go for the flow. Oh, and funny you should ask. That's where
what about
find that on my website. In improv classes, all the information will be there on my website under improv. michaeldardant.com/improv, I think it is. And Funny You Should Ask is the name of my improv program. So everything will be under that title. And I'll be starting soon.
With our last few minutes, Michael, tell us, and I'm sorry, I'm literally just hitting you out of left field with this, but I thought, we got just a couple more minutes to go.
Is this the controversial part you were talking about?
Yeah, no, this is not gonna, no, that's for the next episode. I'm going to lay some things down that are going to annoy some people.
Can you edit me out if I start bleeping?
Don't make me do that. No, I just wanted, we have the IBM has the IBM convention coming up in July, and I know you've been involved with the IBM convention numerous times. Do you have any favorite stories, or do you have any favorite memories? Because I know you have so many friends through magic, and certainly through the IBM and the conventions. Like I said, when I saw you in Pittsburgh MC one of the shows, I thought to myself, I was just like, wow, because I remember you competing back in the day, and that may have been during some of the times that I was competing. And, but seeing you on stage, you just seemed so comfortable, and you seemed you were excellent. You were an excellent MC.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there were any specific fun stories or anything, because we're just trying to let people know that if they love the art of magic, being involved with the IBM, going to the IBM convention, which is in Houston this year. These are things that you can't meet other magicians online the same way. You can't have the same relationship that you can have when you meet them in person. So any favorite memories?
Well, wow, there's a bunch just because I've been to so many of them. And then when I started the competition trek, I was going to like every convention around. And I love being the MC for those types of events because I know, one, there's not a lot of people that can perform without their magic. And when you're emceeing for like a competition, you really shouldn't do any magic because it could conflict with the trick you're about to see with an effect. So having the comedy skills, the improv skills is so important in that situation, which is why I love doing it. I love the challenge of it. It's a lot of fun. And I feel like because of the competitions, I've proven myself as a magician. Like if you missed it, then too bad, but I did it already. So I feel totally comfortable going on stage and not doing any magic and not feeling like I have to just to be one of them. I feel like people respect the other skills that I have, and I'm able to sort of shine in that way. And it's kind of nice to be in a situation where you're considered one of this group and you're accepted as one of the society, but without having to prove it constantly and or feel the need to prove it constantly. And that's the kind of position that I feel like I'm in now at these. One of the, I don't know, there's so many stories, but one that comes to mind, I guess it ended up at the IBM. It started at the PCAM, the Pacific Coast Association of Magicians Convention, and then sort of became a thing and kind of continued. I don't know if you saw myself or anyone running around in the Flash onesie, but the way it started was and yeah, this is the kind of
Flash. He's talking about the superhero, DC superhero, not Flash as nothing.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, there's a different type of Flash onesie that has snaps. This is actually red with a lightning bolt because it's like if the Flash was wearing pajamas.
Awesome.
Sorry. Yeah, it's good to clarify, especially since I'm in New Orleans. Probably somebody flashing me right now. So I'm sitting there, and the reason I bought this is because my luggage got lost on my way to, it was Chilliwack, I think I want to say. Is that a word? Chilliwack, and like around the Vancouver area. It's wherever the PCAM was. Luggage gone. Go to Walmart, buy some clothes, and in the process go, what about, I'm gonna get this onesie, this Flash pajamas. Why not? And for some reason, I'm sitting there next to Chad Long, and we were watching Master Payne do a lecture, and I just leaned over and I said, "Well, do you think it'd be funny if I ran across stage in a Flash onesie and stole Master Payne's prop from him and then just took off running?" And he's like, "Do you have a Flash onesie?" And I said, "Yeah, up in my room." And he goes, "Well, then you have to." And you talk about and improv, and there's certain performers that you will connect with along the way that you know how to elevate each other and how to make each other look good, and that's when you know you have something that is in the flow in the moment and no warning whatsoever. Master Payne's in the middle of, I don't know if you know his pizza routine he does, so he's got this big pizza thing, and I just run through like, and I'm doing the noise, shoo, 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 acting like I'm going real fast, and I just grab his pizza and then run off, shoo, 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 shoo. Well, what is his choice? What is he gonna do? So he just says, "Did you guys see this sudden gust of wind?" And however, he had to finish the lecture. I don't know how he finished it because his prop is gone, because I took off, and I didn't even wait for the response. It's like you just gotta be in character, be in the moment. So I just run through as fast as I can and run out, and I can sort of hear as I'm leaving, I can hear the crowd erupting and people in the hall like, "What just happened?" And as I take off running, and then it just became this running gag, this thing where the Flash would just
running gag.
It was a running gag. Exactly.
It was a running gag. Yeah.
At one point, I think I was stealing other people's trophies. I think, dressed up in it. One time I had to leave. I think it was at the IBM where I had to leave early, so somebody else wore it for the group picture. So everybody thought I was still there.
Awesome.
We have fun.
That is fantastic. Michael Dardant, thank you for being our special guest. This is a relatively new podcast. You're one of the very first special guests we've had, and we have very much appreciated your time and your expertise. Really fun visiting with you. Hey, friends, if you want to learn more about the International Brotherhood of Magicians, check out magician.org. And it is the entertainment type of magic. It is not the spells or witchcraft type of magic. It's entertaining, sleight of hand, misdirection, I have to tell you this because every now and then Cindy in the office gets some strange emails from people. So, yeah. So if you're interested in more information about the art of magic on the entertaining kind, check out magician.org for more details about the IBM convention, which is in Houston this July. You check out ibmconvention.com. There are all sorts of, the schedule is posted, not all the talent, but a lot of the talent is posted. There's more talent coming soon. We want to see you there. You can find all the social handles for Michael Dardant, Ben Young, myself, ways to contact us in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this podcast, leave us a review. Subscribe to us on all your favorite podcast platforms, as well as on our YouTube channel. But this has been our podcast. We thank you one more time, Michael, and we will see you guys next time.